Hey everyone, it's Matt Michaels here on the DeFalco Files with the owner and creator of FSW, the Future Stars of Wrestling here in Las Vegas, Mr. Joe DeFalco. Joe, how's it going, man?
Oh, going wonderful. Words can't describe it.
And for those of you listening this week, if you had in the pool of how he feels this week, take a shot. Um, that's a game that some of the guys love to play is how is Joe going to start the show off? Is it going to be or well,
I heard there was the drinking game. So
Uh, we're coming into Against All Odds this Sunday, the 20th. It's going to be at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Is the bell time. There'll be a pre-show. So if you're coming down to the Silver Nugget, get there early. Meet and greets, I believe, are at 3:30 as well. So plan a nice little day out. And if you're not here in Vegas, you can watch on Fight TV, $14.99, and it's available for pre-order now. Is there anything this week, Joe, that you're on the fence about? Anything that you're a little nervous about, or is it all kind of just going as it usually does in a production week, a show week?
it always ends up going the way you exactly expect it to go. It's just all of a sudden the show's right on you. When you think you have so much time and you want to get everything out there and the promotion, and it's like the Fight TV thing. It finally went up on Monday, and it's
Right.
like, hey, bro, I sent you the stuff 3 weeks ago. Oh, well, there was the new agreement. We wanted you to sign it. I'm like, well, I didn't get it till like the day before on the Saturday. Like, what's the difference? I gave you the flyers and posters. We're signing a new agreement, and even if we didn't sign a new agreement, it's still in place. It isn't like, oh no, we're not allowed to offer the show on Fight TV without an updated contract. Well, from
Right.
what I understand, the contract was supposed to be updated 6 months ago, and we've run enough pay-per-views, so there's no excuse for it not to be available, especially this month when we're trying to push, hey, order the pay-per-view, and we're going to give you a month of the network free. We're hoping, in January we can start doing some new things on the network and kind of banding a little different ideas, for it. So if it gives everybody the opportunity, especially with how hot, Solo Sokoa, Cross coming back, you can see all those archives and Brian Cage getting a lot of love in
Right.
AEW recently, and Toa Leona there, not having a ton of matches, but a lot of his matches are from FSW because that's where he kind of got his start.
Right.
So Zoe Stark and things like that. So you can catch up on all that. You can catch up on the pay-per-views. There's so many different things.
And original stuff that some of the guys have tried and was
And
fairly entertaining stuff.
yeah, I guess, some of it. Some of
I,
it's miserable. Some of it is miserable as fuck. But hey,
you got
everybody has different opinions of things they like and dislike. Like, hey, take a shot. I said, like a Ricky Tenacious. There are actually some fans who enjoy his little spiel before his match.
right.
And sometimes I think, ugh, here he goes. Got to be annoyed. But even I've been enamored sometimes with like, hey, that was pretty creative.
That's the one thing about, and I think that goes for guys like Ricky, who can take other things and bring it into the character and create something that's a little more unique than what other guys out there are doing. I don't think there's anyone else off the top of my head that I can think of around the country who is, essentially one of the most confident yet awful lounge singer types, karaoke singer types that comes up with these great that entrance that he did for the ladder match was hysterical. and he put his heart and soul into that. It was great.
Oh, are you waiting for a response?
Well,
Yeah,
Ricky,
like I said, there are times it's entertaining, and there's times to me it's not. But it's a shtick that's really working for him.
yeah,
He was always a guy that people didn't like anyway, and rubbed the
right,
people the wrong way. So you need those guys on the show. Entertainment value.
right,
It's Santana Jackson. He brings something totally different. Is he going to give you the Matt Vandegrift match of the night? Most likely not. But sometimes his segment may step out when we've done stuff in the past, like the Moonwalk DDT when it was first, brought out. It was something that everybody remembers where they were when
yeah,
they did that. And Santana Jackson, yeah, I was at that show where he did the Moonwalk DDT, and it was all over everywhere.
yeah.
ESPN, and I was getting all these things sent to me as if they were going to make me money. Like, hey, we want to get the rights. Here's, we're going to sign it over, and it's like, okay.
Ricky and Santana are both going to be in the battle royal at Against All Odds.
The Rumble. It's not a
The
battle
Rumble,
royal. Battle royal is everybody in at the same time and then getting tossed over.
right,
Come on.
right. You're right.
Be a wrestling journalist. Let people know the exact match that it is.
Well, that brings up a great point with that. When you look at how you try to time out a Rumble because of the entrances, guys like Santana and Ricky, does that kind of take up that time? So, because it's obviously they're going to come into just a little bit something different than, a Jordan Oasis or a Matt Vandegrift or someone, who's coming in to their regular theme. How do you compensate for that in terms of putting together in your mind how it should play out timing wise?
Well, we don't. It's a minute in between entrances. Now, if you want to take 52 seconds to do an entrance, just don't go over the other guy's entrance.
Right.
Then I'll be pissed off.
Right. And with the fans and having, the reactions that you want, is there a key that you look at and go, how do I thread this story so that when we get to the end point, the fans will give me the reaction that we need to get, because it's going into a championship match against Hammerstone, which I think is such a key thing here, because most Rumbles, you win it, maybe you get a title shot down the line or something. Here, it's going to be that match that night. So is there how do you get to that point where the crowd is then excited for that match at the end of the night?
Well, going over past years, I'm pretty sure, because I remember having a Cross on commentary, a Hammerstone on commentary during these matches.
Yeah.
I'm almost certain Matt Hardy was on commentary. Maybe it wasn't for that, maybe it was for a different match. But
Right.
utilizing that in a situation, Hammerstone has to sit and wait to see who wins the Rumble, which of course is going to open the show.
Right.
So it was a little different. Last year, because of the pandemic and we finally did the first big show, we actually did the main event the next night. So we had the Rumble, the Fallout, which was Juicy and EC3 stepping out at the same time, trying to position MK and the Army to win the championship. But unfortunately for MK, his mouth wasn't able to cash the check for EC3, and ended up costing him the match. But on this show, it happens today, and the main event happens later.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm almost certain Hammerstone wasn't even in the building the first night. But even
Right.
in LA Knight, I remember Eli Drake on commentary because he was always entertaining when he was our champ. Pretty sure he might have been a guy. And a lot of times there's confrontations, a semi congratulatory thing. Hammerstone comes out to shove the face in Chris Bay's face or the belt in his
Well,
face
yeah.
and says, "Good luck, kid. You ain't getting this tonight." And one time Hammerstone was right, and the second time Hammerstone was wrong. So, but it did occur. So hopefully, the crowd will be happy to see who wins the Rumble to take on Hammerstone. It's a little more difficult when you have the babyface as the champion
Right.
instead of the heel, because if now one of your most favorite guys wins, it's like, okay, well, do you like Hammerstone more? Or
Right.
if a heel wins, you're not going to root for that guy anyway. So, we're hoping that we're going to have a very exciting final five, and let the best man win. There's a lot of great talent in that mix.
Yeah. Uh, when you look at Masters, Carlito, um, guys like that, Sam Adonis, um, is there a temptation as a promoter to automatically just think of one of those guys as, okay, well, this automatically would be a great match with Hammerstone, and Hammerstone's never worked, let's say, so and so. Does that come into a factor that you have bigger name guys and the possibility of matching them up against a guy like Hammerstone, who, for him, it's, and again, another step up to have those types of matches under his belt?
You try to take into consideration everything, but most importantly, it's what's best for my show.
Right.
If what's best for my show is also, hey, a great opportunity for Hammerstone to wrestle, somebody from the bucket list, if we can make that happen, absolutely. But if it doesn't make sense for what we're trying to do, then my show is going to outweigh my desire to make Hammerstone get what he wants.
Right.
Because the bottom line is Hammerstone is going to do whatever I ask, and he's going to do it to the best of his abilities. And no matter who it is, he's going to try and make it work because he's a true professional.
Right.
But there's a lot of guys in there that would be a great match. I've seen Damian Drake and Hammerstone have a great match. I've seen, Remy Marcel and Hammerstone have a great match. I
Right.
saw Hammerstone supposed to wrestle Toa. Toa couldn't make it for an AEW thing, and Cutthroat Cody got put in there. And they
Right.
had a great match. So the one constant is Hammerstone's going to have a really good match with a lot of people.
Yeah.
So would I love to see Hammerstone wrestle, there's probably 15 guys that I would enjoy. I'd like to see Hammerstone versus Hero Lou.
Yeah.
That has happened, but that was a few years back when Hero was way greener
Right.
and not at the confident level that he has as the tag champ.
Yeah.
So Shogun didn't get revenge from when Hammerstone and Graves laid him out.
Right.
And he lost his opportunity when he actually did go through the Rumble and win.
Right.
And then, of course, you got the Adonises and the Carlitos and the Chris Masters and the Toas. The guys that, Toa's a little different. Toa's still our guy per se, but he didn't have the run for as long as we would have liked because they scooped him up quicker than we expected him to do.
Right.
similar to Solo Sokoa. Like, that there was a good chance of him winning the Against All Odds Rumble and wrestling Hammerstone, because I think that would have been the marquee match.
Yeah.
And they had their history from when Graves turned on Solo to realign with Hammerstone.
Right.
And Hammerstone beat Solo to win the Nevada State title. So, there's a lot of guys that you want to see, but then there's also a good group of the younger up and coming guys that, hey, it'd be interesting to see. As I said, a Hero Lou. Ice Williams wants to get back into the mix. You have the faction. If the four of them are in there, they could do a good job cleaning house.
Right.
So the opportunities are there for a numerous amount of guys. Now, I'm pretty sure the fans would pop to see Bodie wrestling for the heavyweight championship against Hammerstone. But man, if Bodie gets through that group of 29 guys, that's pretty impressive. So,
yeah.
And now it's the luck of the draw. There's nobody who started at 1, unless Chris Bay did. I don't know when he started, but it's very rare that somebody's going to start in the 1-2 spot and they're going to go all the way.
Right.
So,
when you look at, you said, let's say Bodie. I'm taking this just out of curiosity, with Bodie's age and play being that he's just 15. What is it like for you to do you want to give Bodie that opportunity at some point, even if it's not for the championship, to wrestle a Hammerstone, just to kind of see where he's at some point within the next few years, as he's, kind of going through now that development of, 15 to 21 years old? Is it something that
he might not be around here when he's 21.
True. But that's the question, I guess, is with the time that you have with him now, do you think about having, even if it's, an opportunity at a future shock, but for him to wrestle a guy like Hammerstone, just to have that experience of wrestling a guy who is so professional and so fluid that, it hopefully builds Bodie's confidence as he's, going to be going through a lot of different, opportunities and changes within the next 5 years of his life.
I thought you were going to say puberty,
Well, I'm assuming he's already.
The thing is, it's like he's had his opportunities. He's wrestled the Gregory Sharp. He's wrestled the Matt Vandergriff. He's wrestled Damian Drake. He's wrestled Funny Bone, Brandon Gatson, Eli Everfly. So I don't think there's anything to go say, hey, Bodie needs to work him because he needs to prove himself. I think he proves himself every time he's in the ring. And every time he gets in the ring, you could see he's getting bigger. He's getting better. He's getting more confident. He'll sit there and, hey, what are we doing here? What do you think about this, that, and the other thing? It's like, instead of being just the kid who sat back and is being told what to do, now he's in a position to where he's talking to a 28-year-old who he has more experience in the ring with, and he's dictating what they need to do to make the match worthwhile. Right. So he has had, great mentorship, between a Sin Bodie and a Cody and around Kenny and all these guys he's around, because they see this young kid and they want to help him. They're like, wow, this kid is amazing that he's doing what he could do at his age. And as good as he was, as fun as he was a year ago, he's so much better right now
Right.
from when he actually just started being put on shows. I was very hesitant and I put him in very, small spots, hide the weaknesses, give
Right.
this young kid who can do some cool things an opportunity to do those things. Putting him in a tag with Sin Bodhi, putting him in a tag with Remy Marcel, where him shining is the key to the match.
Right.
It's not him getting, thrown around, which unfortunately I've seen in other places
Sure.
because they're looking at him as the flavor of the month, the young prodigy. Let's get him on our show. And it looks good when our guy beats him.
Right.
Well, I've always gone out of my way and get a little irritated when I try to protect him. And unfortunately, he's young, he's impressionable, he wants to work. So when
Right.
somebody says, "Oh, hey, bro, I saw your stuff, man. I want to use you. Here's a few bucks." Wow, now he's getting paid, and he's getting to be highlighted elsewhere. Now
Right.
all of a sudden, it makes you, you know, you're 15 years old. I wouldn't say it's an ego thing, but it's an ego thing.
Sure.
You feel like, hey, I've kind of made it. Like that place over there wants me, and that place over there wants me. But I've tried to, calm him down a bit and explain to him the values of working other shows. In some cases, it's great, but in some cases, when you're working guys that you're 15 years old that aren't even close to your skill level, it doesn't really help you in any way. And you're going to take so many bumps. And when you're starting at 14, that brings the time frame down.
Right.
So pick and choose those matches because you're always going to be bumping around. You're always going to have an opportunity to get popped on your head.
Right.
So be in there with the best you can be because that at least eliminates that possible opportunity. He wrestled with Funny Bone and he kind of got fucked up a little bit.
Right.
So Funny Bone's been doing it for 20 years. But at least you have the track record of a guy who's been doing it 20 years. When you're doing with a guy who's been not doing it 20 months and
Right.
you're noticing this guy's not getting booked in a lot of places. So how safe is he?
Right.
Nobody's going to deliberately go out there to try to hurt you, but he's not just anybody. If
Yeah.
he was 23 years old and there was 20 guys like him, it's a different story. He's 15, needs to be protected,
Right.
needs to not need to work 3 times a week, 12 times a month, and 140 times a year. You
Right.
know, take important matches, take matches that are going to help you down the road, but also limit. Hey, you're a little banged up, you don't wrestle that day.
Right.
You're not 28, you fought through the injuries. You're 15, you're still growing.
Right.
Be as careful as you can be.
And
And
at
then
what
take advantage when you do get a great opportunity like, hey, Sammy Callahan sees you on our show and says, hey, I want to use this kid in the scramble. Well, he's going to be protected. He's going to go in with Billy Starks, another young phenom.
yeah.
And, it's fun to see the Nick Waynes and the Mathers and these younger kids. That's because that's what they are. They're kids still.
Yeah. Yeah, which you didn't see uh even 5 years ago. It's kind
Right.
of
Vandergroff's an old man now that he's 25.
um for you as a promoter then, let me ask you, um you kind of mentioned the idea of, okay, you go somewhere else, you get paid. For you, at what point do you have to look at it and go, okay, he's at a point now, and this would be with other wrestlers too, who are, who have trained, who are getting that little bit of that push, getting things going. At what point do you go, okay, now I have to open my pocketbook up a little bit more, so that at least they're getting compensated what you feel is, something that is fair enough for them to, give you the work that you want to see them do, as opposed to them, chasing paydays elsewhere, so that it kind of, you know, brings them in a little bit, I guess. How do you deal with that in terms of essentially your budget having to expand over the years when you have guys like this who are progressing at the rate a guy like Bodie progressed at?
I think I've grown up a lot in that manner because the first few years in, when we trained you, and to this day, I still remember that you're 2 months behind, or you didn't pay for 3 months, and I let you slide, and all that. And at some points, it would really piss me off, like this motherfucker, didn't pay for 4 months, and now he's crying about getting paid. And it's like,
Right,
well, how about we do it this way? And, it comes down to the factoring of how we do things. And, I've explained it before, you pay your dues. And then the
right,
dues kind of drop. And then when you're part of doing things, hey, this is the school show. So instead of paying your dues, we're going to call it a wash. You train whenever you want and you do the school show for free. Then eventually you reach a level to where the Shoguns, the Heroes, the Ice Williams, the younger guys that started with you that were trainees, you have to give them some money
right,
because in some issues, some people are upset because they see somebody else get an envelope and they feel they're deserving of one. And it's like, you do understand that all schools have a gym fee. So if I'm going to charge you a gym fee, but I don't use you this month because you're booked somewhere else and I didn't need you on the second show, you're now going to still pay me, say, $50 instead of getting that money back from a show.
right,
Now, we can do it that way, but then if I don't book you, now you're going to owe me the money. If I do book you, you're not getting anything. So if you're not okay with that, then we can go that route. And some people are more than okay. And I try to be upfront and speak to people and explain things to them. Now, some people don't want to hear it. Some people don't give a fuck. Oh, that place over there, they pay me. I can go to Marquez, and that guy, they give me $50. And it's like, well, you had to drive all the way there. You had to drive all the way back. You had to stop and spend $12 for your Subway sandwich and your soda.
right,
Now, gas is pretty expensive these days. So if somebody's throwing you $30 or $40 and you're going all the way to Arizona, did you make anything?
right,
Now, did you go there and you wrestled a hell of a talent that whether you got paid or not, it was worth going? Because that's all the situation here, where you don't, you just basically flop out of bed, get in a car, drive 10 minutes, and you work in the show.
right,
And in some cases, you're working really good matches. And I've seen guys who have the best sense. And, Chris Bay's perfect example of that. A Hammerstone would drive from Arizona, knew about the opportunities that he was going to get.
right,
Money was never a concern. I have never talked in reality money with a guy like Hammerstone or Bay. It's kind of like as they progressed, Chris Bay's the perfect example. He skyrocketed quick. So
right,
even though he may have been behind on dues and things like that, it was still important to keep a good relationship. And here was a guy who was struggling financially anyway,
right,
that it was beneficial for me to make sure I took care of him a little bit, because he also knew that I did a lot of good things for him. He'll be the first person to tell you. He always credits everything that I've done for him as an important part of his growth and development. So it's not exposing anything, but it's also like, okay, well, what are you getting here? And then
Right.
I'd be like, well, hey, I can do this. And even, when we did shows, I remember before the pandemic, and he wrestled Tessa Blanchard at the Toy Con.
Right.
And, we kind of had an understanding that at the bigger shows, I would take care of him at that point. And it was like, well, is this a big show? And he'd be like, hey, what can you do for this show? And I'm like, I can do this. And 10 out of 10 times, his response has always been, okay.
Sure.
He's never been like, hey, bro, you need to throw me another $100, another $200. Hey, you're paying that guy who's flying in X amount of dollars in a flight. He understands what we're trying to do. He
Right.
understands that I'm paying this money not for me. I'm paying this money to give him a great opportunity to have a big match. That sometimes the name may have a lot of value in the wrestling world, but not have a lot of value in, say, people going out of their way to buy tickets because of that person,
Right.
where they know they're going to get a great match, but they weren't going to be like, oh, I wasn't going to the show, but because he's on it, I'm going to be there.
Sure.
So it takes into a lot of consideration. So getting back to the initial point, yeah, you have to see where you're at and what people are doing. And it was the same relationships coming out of a Damian Drake, a Gregory Sharp, a Matt Vandergriff, Jay Vidal, who was struggling and was kind of like, hey, he was kind of a Sin Bodhi guy. So he came in on his dime. And
Right.
at that time, Sin had his own, group of students that paid him to train. And we would get a percentage of him training our guys. Not training our guys. He'd get a percentage because he was training the class, but they were considered his guys, like
Right.
the Sky Highs of the world when they first came in, because Sin had his own place. So with Jay Vidal and all those other ones, it would be like, okay, I get kicked back X amount of dollars from their dues because they are training at our facility with other trainers. You can't keep all the money, obviously, because we're paying rent, we're paying insurance. It was making him understand that when you get paid this amount of money, you get to keep this amount of money. When I
Right.
get paid this amount of money, I have to pay the rent, I have to pay the power, I have to pay the insurance. So we only get to keep a portion of that and stick in our pockets.
Right.
So in a Jay Vidal situation, it would be like, hey, you have to talk to Sin about lowering your rate, but to start, I'll waive my percentage,
Sure.
which was probably about a third. And at that time, he's probably paying a couple $100 a month. And I felt he had a lot more experience than new people that were coming in for the 200 and 250 a month. And I personally thought it was unfair that you would charge that guy the same amount that you were charging a kid that just walked in the door. He had 3 years of training with Gangrel. He was
Right.
already being placed on shows. So if he was my student, I would have charged him way less. So at the one point during the pandemic, Jay moved back to Florida just because of financial situations. Couldn't pay the dues, had the family because couldn't really pay rent in Vegas. So it was pointless. So he went back home, and I continually kept in contact with him. And then he came back, and sky became the limit
Right.
for him. So he's another one who I'm pretty certain is extremely grateful that I went out of my way to try to accommodate him and do what was best for him.
Yeah.
So he's another guy that doesn't question if I give him money. And of course, now I always give him money,
Sure.
but I wouldn't be shocked if I said to him, "Hey, the gate really sucked today. I'm not paying you." I'm pretty sure he'd be like okay with it. But
Right.
I understand that if I have a budget, and I've always said, if this is the budget and you're getting paid this amount of money and I have you penciled in for that, I don't give a fuck how much money I lose. You're still getting that money
Right.
because it's a long term thing. And that's the problem with a lot of promoters that, oh, well, we didn't do good on the gate. Well, when we go to a casino show, I have envelopes taped shut with everybody's name on it. And okay, it's a little different now because we get the PayPal money and a lot of the money comes in, so you can take it out of the bank. But
Right.
even back in the day when it was 95% cash, that money was already paid for. And in the beginning, when we didn't have a bank account with $10,000 in funds for a $3,000 show, back when we were flying by the seat of our pants, and it was, oh shit, we're 400 short on the rent. Here we go, because we didn't have a nest egg.
Right.
But if you were getting $50 or you were getting $250, your envelope was already pretty much made before the show even started and before I collected any of the money at the door.
Yeah.
So, and that's the way I've always done business. But some people say, hey, you're doing business like, a small time guy. Well, I look at it as I'm doing it as this, I guess you could say, local yokel kind of thing. And if somebody didn't have the money to pay for a ticket today, which we deal with all the time, hey, can I catch you in 2 weeks? Hey, I get my check next week. And it's like, you've gone to 50 shows. If you beat me for that $60, I'm okay. You've been a valuable fan to us for a long time.
Right.
Because if you don't pay it, you're not coming in the next show without paying what you owe.
Right.
So I would rather never lose a customer or never lose a fan. So school shows different than the casino shows. And the most important thing is in that situation that you asked is you make people aware of the reasoning behind it. Like, oh, if you think you should be paid, I will sit down with you and I will explain to you the way the situation is. And if we disagree on it, because I've been okay with, hey, Tito and Shay, they're out of town guys. Hey, we're working for this amount, man, Joe. We love working for you. Any chance you can go to this? And it's like, well, if I go to that, I really got to give Hammerstone more money because I pay him not that kind of money.
Right.
And not that it's great. But I understand you need more money. How about on the school shows, I give you this, but on the casino show, I give you that. And if you can't communicate, well, you're never going to do anything in the business. If you communicate to me your issues instead of just being pissed off about it, well, we can try and work it out. And now we've had other issues where I didn't think the person was of the value that they thought they were. And it was like, well, this is what I can do. And you're not happy with that. So what we're going to do is good luck. And in the future, and believe me, we've had that with guys. We had that with Kevin Cross, where he started making really good money elsewhere. And at that point, it wasn't affordable to the budget. Right. And he didn't want to miss out on his AAA money or his impact. But after a while, it was like, hey, you know what? FSW had done a lot for me. Hey, they remember when I didn't pay my dues that time. And, I'm going to give Joe a better deal. And it's the same thing with the other guys. There are times people go away for a while because they need to sow their oats, like the 1% West Coast Wrecking Crew. Royce got on a little bit of a roll. He was in NWA. Then it was a guy would have had to book him through there. And then all of a sudden I'm supposed to pay him more money than I would have had to pay him at the Mecca 2 months ago because it was going through the office. And it wasn't any heat, but he understood I couldn't really use him to pay him that at a school show because that would be like 3 times the amount I was paying a Hammerstone. And at
Yeah.
the time, Lagana was running the bookings for the NWA. And oh yeah, I know who you are, Joe. Blah 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 blah. This is what we're looking at, and it's like you can't explain. Hey, this is a school show with 80 people. This is a casino show with 480 people.
Right.
We have different budgets for different rates. So they didn't care the reasoning behind why that show was less than the other show.
Right.
So sometimes it just ends up being that you can't do business with people that you thoroughly enjoy and like
Yeah.
because they're priced out of it.
Yeah.
We love Brian Cage, but it's a rare occasion that we can use him. One show we got a guy who sponsored Cage, so he paid half his rate, and then we got another one at the last show where they covered some money from it, and the thing was it's a mecca, so this is the budget.
Right.
Now, if you're way out of my budget, but you still fit into the budget of the entirety of the show, and I think you're going to have value, then we're going to use you. But I can't use Brian Cage at a school show.
Yeah.
He would cost more than the entire locker room.
Right.
And that's nothing on Brian. Brian's making a good salary in AEW. He doesn't have to wrestle. He loves to wrestle.
Right.
But he wants to make sure he's compensated because just in case he gets hurt,
yeah.
Then what? Hey, we're calling you in. We need you to AEW tonight. You're working in this tournament eliminator, and we're having you go over Dante Martin. Oh, sorry, I can't. I worked FSW this past week, and I fucked up my ankle, and I'm out for 3 months.
Right.
Right. Then what?
Which is also a very fascinating thing in terms of AEW Impact. These companies that allow the guys to do independent shows. Obviously, WWE, everyone's protected because no one's wrestling outside the system.
And they're the only ones who consistently do house shows. So it isn't when you're on TV or you're not on at all. So it's a weird situation because in WWE, you have a contract. In AEW, you have a contract. And in Impact, you have a contract. But in a lot of cases, it's contracted based on your appearances. Well, if we're only taping AEW style, which might be 6 days a month, well, then you're getting paid 6 days a month if you're on a daily, on a per show basis. Impact, I know numerous guys who are on a per show basis. And then I know guys who in the past, like a Willie Mack, he was on a contract, whether he wrestled or not. So when I would call D'Lo and say, hey, we want Willie Mack on the show because I can't call Willie and say, hey, Willie, can you work the show? He'll be like, you got to talk to the office because they handle his bookings. Because Willie Mack is paid a weekly contract regardless of how many dates. Now, the dates probably specify, hey, you got 50 dates with us for X amount of dollars. Well, when you only had worked 22 dates this year, and now you want a 23rd date, that company, meaning FSW, has to pay the office of Impact Wrestling. Right. And then Willie Mack comes in and wrestles. And then Willie Mack, per se, doesn't get paid for that appearance, but he really did get paid for the appearance because he's getting a weekly contract. Yeah. Whether he works 5 shows or 1 show or 0 shows, he's still making that X amount of dollars every single month.
Right.
So, that's why it's a weird situation. So in most cases, you're not John Moxley, you're not Chris Jericho, you're not Bryan Danielson, you're not CM Punk you're not the Young Bucks, Omega. They are locked, signed, sealed, and delivered. Like Moxley wasn't until recently. And the only place you could work was AEW. But you would also see 100 other of those guys working elsewhere. Why? Right. Because they're only working 3 to 5 days a month. And they're only getting paid for 3-5 days a month. And even if they're getting $1,000 a day, $5,000 a month isn't making you a millionaire anytime soon.
Right.
So you have to go out and supplement.
Yeah.
and fill in your other 6 to 8 dates. And now you got 15 dates, and you can work your New Japan. Look at all these guys that Chris Bay now. He's got his Impact gig. Now he's going to Japan, and now he's working there, and he'll be
Yeah.
gone. But Japan ain't going to be like, hey, we're going to pay you that Impact Wrestling contract of X amount of dollars per show.
Right.
Well, what do you mean? I'm there for 10 days and I'm only working 4 shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the structure of the company that you're in.
Yeah. And which that's a great segue to mention that Chris is over right now with Ace Austin in Japan. They're I think the Super J Cup tag team tournament starts either today or tomorrow. It's
Monday.
Monday. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
because we almost thought we were going to have Chris, and then it turned out that he was flying out like 2 days before or something
yeah.
like that.
So when you look at that opportunity that Chris is getting, which is very high profile and very distinguished, what is it that FSW has that you guys give to guys like Chris Bay in terms of giving them that that readiness, that preparedness, that when these opportunities continue to keep coming to them, that they're able to go over to Japan and adapt for the week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or sometimes 3-4 months, when you have to be in a different country, when you're and I know if you look at Bay, another example for him is it's flight after flight after flight, because you're working yourself around the country. How do you guys prepare these guys for getting used to what that life is like, and not flubbing the opportunities when they get them, because they're prepared for practically everything that they can see come up in a situation of being either overseas or even having flight issues, or the stuff in life that comes up alongside being a professional wrestler.
I always try to tell everybody the number one thing that will help you get to the next level is relationships. And the relationships of meeting people that down the road who see you as an asset will go out of their way to help get you into that company. And that's why it's like, I know people are like, oh, seminars, waste of money, tryout camps, waste of money. Everything's a waste of money because you may be not good enough. And the most important thing to try to get picked up by one of the major companies is being seen.
Yeah.
Now, FSW, we make it easy to be seen because of 13 years of building what we have. People saw that we were bringing in top talent that wasn't just from Las Vegas, because there wasn't barely any at the time. So
Right.
you would bring in people, and then you would look at our heavyweight champions. Oh, Brian Cage, even a Mike Modest,
Yeah.
a Cross, an Eli Drake, and at the time went down a Hammerstone. Well, how did Hammerstone sow his oats? Well, he got to wrestle guys like Brian Cage, and he got to wrestle guys like Eli Drake, and he got to wrestle guys like Kevin Cross when he was coming up. What about Kevin Cross? Well, he got to wrestle the Chris Masters. He got to wrestle a Kenny King. He got to wrestle a Timothy Thatcher, because FSW will bring in talent for the talented. The
Right.
higher level you are in FSW, the better matches you're going to get. Hey, Matt Vandergrift, love to work TJP. Hey, TJP, he lives in town. Hey, can you do me a deal? Hey, Matt's like, hey, you know what? Don't even worry about paying me. If I need to kick in some money, let me know. I want to match with TJP. And
Right.
I'm like, well, it's going to be a great match. and I can get him at a discounted rate because TJ likes us. He helps train with us. He's friends with a lot of the people because it's the relationships that have been made.
Yeah.
The relationship we made when Jeff Jarrett and Sanjay Dutt had Global Force got Kevin Cross to be looked at by Sanjay Dutt and Jeff Jarrett, which led to him getting signed by Impact. It led Sanjay Dutt to seeing Hammerstone and getting him on Impact Wrestling at the time. It was him now moving on to the WWE and having a show in Vegas, and Chris Bay shows up and they're looking for a pre-show match or a 205 live match against Arya Davari. And Sanjay Dutt was like, there wasn't a question of who it was going to be. It was like, Chris Bay, get him in here. He's going to have the match. Signed, sealed, and delivered because he knew who Chris Bay was.
Right.
Not because of anything I did, other than conjured the relationship with Impact. We did the tryouts. We did that. So despite not being part of the tryout, Chris Bay was still known by our people and their people. And then he got looked at and he wrestled, I believe it was Daga on the Impact show like a month before. And it's like, man, 50-50, all this stuff. They're going to sign him. Well, we're trying to see. I talked to Scott D'Amore. All of a sudden, he shows up on fucking 205 Live and literally gets an offer the next day.
Yeah.
And it was all because of the relationships. And the more people you meet, the better your opportunities become. So when Hammerstone is in MLW and he sees a guy that he thinks, man, this is the fucking guy can't miss. Do you really think he's not going to go to Court Bauer and MLW and said, hey, take a look at this? Or I said, hey, Conan, I think you would really like Damian Drake and Matt Vandergriff. We're going to do a tryout, and I'm going to put them in a match against each other because I think there's something for them in your company. He saw them, boom. They got signed, and they were wrestling the AAA shows in Tijuana. To where actually before we even put them together, he was putting them together as a tag team.
Right.
Now, that opportunity, would it have come? Probably not. Because what would Matt Vandergriff do? He would have sent the tape to Conan, possibly, email, just like 1,000 other people. Right. How many of them is he going to go through? I remember Sanjay Dutt needed a tag team. And at that one point, me and Remy Marcel were not seeing eye to eye. He was doing other things. He kind of got back into the mix. And it was like, hey, can you do me a favor? And Sanjay was looking for a tag team. And I sent him a little stuff on the Whirlwind Gentlemen. He's like, oh, I love these guys. And he used them on the show. They had a job out to the Bollywood boys, but they got put on Global Force Wrestling.
Yeah.
And it was like they had sent the tape or whatever they had to do to Sanjay, but there's a million tapes to look through. You're not going to look through them. It's the same thing with me. You know how many guys that I have personally used because of another wrestler recommending them? I say it all the time with the Santino brothers. It's from one to the other, to the other, to the other.
Right.
And despite the fact I get stuff from other people that sometimes may be good, sometimes may be terrible, whatever it is. But when Hammerstone says, hey, there's a guy, and then I get an email right after that from Dom in Arizona, hey, we have a guy, Class, we saw your new talent initiative. I think he would be great for your show. He's already booked. I don't have to look at any footage of him because there are people that I trust who go out and say, hey, by the way, what was it? Chris Nasty. This guy from Santino. He's messaged me a few different times. Remy hits me up. Hey, bro, next time down at Future Shock, see if you can find a spot for this guy. Because he knows his word means something.
Right.
Turned out Chris Nasty got fucked up and he got hurt, and now he's going to be out for a while. But that's how I got to use a Cameron Gates. Hey, I need a no limits guy. I'm doing this, blah, 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 the other thing. And then between Matt Vandergriff and Jay Vidal, they're the ones going on the West Coast. Hey, who's this young guy that might be coming in, that might be coming up and looking good? and Cameron Gates was the guy. And then we brought him in a few times and looks really good.
Yeah.
And there's another one on Future Shock we're going to use. Primo Henio, I believe his name is. And he came to the show at the Mecca. And I have no idea who he was. And then during the show, as I'm backstage, Dom comes up to me, who happened to make the show, Dom Vitale, PCW Arizona.
Yep.
And he goes, "Hey, I just want to let you know, I personally vouch for this guy. I know he wants to work for you if you can get a spot." So I looked at his stuff beforehand. Seemed all right, but I didn't study it. I didn't go through every nitpick and everything. But now I booked him for the next 2 shows on the 3rd and the 17th because I'm confident enough that enough people have told me he's good that I will now use him on the shows.
Yeah.
So how I got Johnny Robbie. People are like, "Hey, she's really good." Okay, checked her out. Looked really good. She couldn't make the show. She came in, very impressed with her. So I have her booked, and she's actually going to work the 17th, and she's going to work the New Year's Eve show. I'm like, "Hey, just so you know, the 31st is New Year's Eve. There's a lot of times people have things to do. I don't want you to be confused because there's no way I'm getting you a room. They're like $800 in Vegas."
And that's a good segue there too. After Against All Odds on December 3rd, you'll be doing a Future Shock at the arena, and then on the 17th, a High Octane at the FSW arena, and then of course the New Year's Eve show will be at the FSW arena as well. Last year, New Year's Eve show, you had the Iron Man match between Vandegrift and Damian Drake that timed out perfectly right at the countdown of the new year.
And people say I don't start on time, huh?
Well, the question is that something you might be looking at doing as kind of an annual match, at the end of the year, right at midnight, in terms of 2 guys or 2 tag teams doing a Iron Man match for that last hour of the year?
Nope. Not really. If it makes sense, again, I'm not going to do something just in Halloween. You try to do the stuff with the casket. That's kind of easy to do.
Right.
But a Iron Man match, man, you really need to be invested in these 2 guys. Sure. And we think very quickly, because of their success as the tag team, the turn with the Unguided, that the cage match, and then we did the steel cage match. I think that was that was after the anniversary, I would think. Yeah, that was No Escape, obviously.
There was No Escape, right.
Because we moved No Escape up. Instead of in January, we did it in December. And then we were able to do, or November, whatever it was. But it led us into that. But doing an Iron Man match and say, "Hey, everybody, we're going to do Bodie and Braxton in an Iron Man match." I don't know if there's excitement in seeing that. Number one, you have to have 2 high level wrestlers.
Right.
Like Hammerstone can wrestle in an Iron Man match 1,000%. If he wrestled across in an Iron Man match, I think people would really, really be invested in that. But to just have a guy he hasn't wrestled before and say, "Hey, everybody, it's going to be Hammerstone and Sam Adonis in an Iron Man match," it'd be like, huh? Like, why would that be necessary? Like, It needs to be necessary. It's the styling of the wrestler you are. Is that gimmick match a last man standing? Is it a false count anywhere? Is it a no DQ? Is it a ladder match? Is it a strap match? Is it an Iron Man match? Like, an Iron Man match is far and few in between. We've done a couple of 30-minute ones. I believe we did one. It was when Jack Manley beat Saiku for the No Limits Championship. Or it was, actually, I think it might have been Jack Manley and Bryce Harrison. And that was when Jacob Austin Young turned to align with Bryce Harrison. And I think that was the Iron Man match. That
Yeah.
was a 30-minute match, and that was probably 7 years ago. So we hadn't done one of those in an extremely long time.
Yeah.
And if we
Uh,
did do it, it was 30 minutes. So that was the first time in 13 years. And I was going to do 30 minutes. They wanted to prove to me that they could do 60-minute Ironman match. And my problem was, man, on New Year's Eve, are the fans going to want to give a fuck about a
yeah.
60-man Ironman match? And after 60 minutes, I felt like there was probably 20 minutes left because
Yeah.
they floated so well that timing wasn't even an issue to me.
No, no, that actually was about as professional as you could get in terms of if you're watching that match, it never felt like it dragged at any point. It never felt like it was an hour. So that's why I was curious on your thoughts on how you utilize that match because it really worked out nicely for that particular show.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I was 1,000%.
is there anything special that you would do knowing that it is New Year's Eve and you've done this now 2 years now, right? The New Year's Eve show.
Yeah, we did 2 New Year's Eve shows.
Is there anything that you look at that you go, okay, how can we make this a little more special to get the fans in there because there is so much, choice out here in Vegas on New Year's Eve? Um, or is it just kind of like, almost like the Halloween show in a sense, where it's doing it for the fans and for the guys, and just to kind of have a little family celebration. What it is it about that show that you look at that's a little bit more special to get people in?
We don't. We looked at it as initially, you know what? Who wants to? I think my wife worked, till midnight anyway, and it was like, well, I'm not doing nothing on New Year's, and even if she was home, I wouldn't really be doing anything. We'd be sitting home.
Right.
You're not going to go out to go on the strip or any crazy shit like that. So it's like, hey, thinking, what if we do a New Year's Eve show? And then, of course, the first people we bring it to is the wrestlers. Like,
Right.
hey, we're thinking wrestling show on New Year's Eve. And, oh, I'm in. Oh, I'm in. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. We're like, we built a good brand of people. I think because we did the first one, I believe, in 2020, because that was before the pandemic. We didn't do the one in 2021, and then we
No,
did it again in 2022.
no,
So
it'd be 19. 19 was the first one. 20 was the pandemic,
no,
and
but the
20,
pandemic was March of 2020.
right. So the
So
pandemic
January 1st,
2020.
2020, we did it.
Right. Well, okay, I see. And I was going
Well,
off of
yeah,
the
19th into the 20, right.
right. Okay, I
And
gotcha.
now, and we did the 21 into 22.
22. Right.
And now that, right. But the
Right.
idea was, okay, now that we got a good response from wrestlers. So we're going to have a decent enough card. And that was the most important thing. And
Yeah.
then secondly was like, hey, the regular fans, the Jamies and Freds and Georges and the Chiefs and all that crew, you know, more of our fans are older than 25 years old.
Right.
So they
Right.
probably weren't going to do much on New Year's Eve. So to them, it was like, oh, yeah, we're in. And it was like, oh, shit, we'll probably do all right. We'll probably get 60, 70 people.
Yeah.
And it was more like 150 people because Damian Drake and his family and friends were coming. And now, because it was mainly a local show, because again, I can't bring somebody in from out of town on New Year's Eve and get them a room.
Right.
So they're going to wrestle at 9 o'clock show. They're wrestling at 11. Where are they going? They're going to be in the middle of the highway at midnight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like we generally used a lot of the locals who brought some of their family and friends to come. We, did the champagne toast, and we had it as it was a get together of friends. A lot of
Yeah.
people have have their friends over their house to celebrate New Year's Eve. We had our friends come to the FSW arena and celebrate, and we saw, even after a year off, and we did it again last year, that we had a really good turnout. Now, we couldn't do it at Silver Nugget for 500 people, and that's fine.
Right.
You know, we're fun for the whole family. We're fun for 50 people, and we're fun for 500 people.
Right.
And that's what makes us successful, because we know we open the doors, there's going to be a decent amount of people that are going to come in anyway. And
Right.
then it's like, oh, okay. Hey, if we got to get the vet ticks, we probably even got a few of those guys to come in. And the veterans came in and spent some time and checked out the wrestling show.
Yeah.
So I'm not looking at it as, oh, we made this amount of money, we made that amount of money. You know, we do it for the love of the game, and when we make money, it's great. And of course, we want to make money, and we try to budget things to not lose money. But a show like this, whether it makes money or not, we're gonna do it every year if we can.
Sure. Yeah. And it's a good time. So if you're in Vegas and you don't have the plans of going to, the Strip, which is crazy, um, being that it's the FSW arena also makes it fairly accessible too, where you're not running into, you know, crazy areas of town. So that's an
Right,
option.
right, right. We're easy to locate. You know,
Yeah.
if you don't have to get on the highway, you can flop over a road. You might have to go all the way down to like Warm Springs to cross if you're on the other side of the strip. But
Right.
again, you know, it's okay. I've already, as I said, Johnny Robbie's going to be on the show. I got a commitment from Vandergriff, so he'll be on the show. And you know, I can't believe a Damian Drake, Remy. Take our top 15 guys, and I guarantee you 8 or 10 will be on the show.
Right.
Like a TBD. Hey, they work the nightclub scene. So I'm going to assume they're not going to be able to make it. I always knew Ice Williams, we had talked, and, they work the nightclub scene.
Right.
And odds are they won't be there, because if you work in a nightclub, that's the biggest night of the year. So
Right.
nobody's taking it off to rock a wrestling show. But a lot of other people, if you're not in the nightclub scene, you don't work in the hotels, you're probably not working at midnight on New Year's Eve.
Right.
So, it's a great opportunity. And also puts you in the good graces when you're a younger kid and you're struggling to get on shows, and maybe you only get on Future Shock. There's probably going to be a couple for younger guys on a New Year's show, because, as I said, we're not using, other than maybe 1 or 2 out of state guys instead of 7 or 8.
Right.
Like, I can't imagine the Arizona guys, unless they got something special going on, they're going to make the shows because they want to be wrestlers. They want to wrestle for FSW. So if this is an outlet for them to get on a big show, because it is one of our bigger FSW
Yeah.
arena shows.
Yeah.
So, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll have some major announcements on, who's going to be there for that event.
And again, as we kind of get close to wrapping up here this week, Against All Odds is this Sunday, the 20th, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Again, there's pre-show matches. What's going on with is it 4 tag teams in the pre-show match?
Yeah, the pre-show match is going to feature two teams that know each other really well, Sky High and the Suavecitos. A team that we were very impressed with from Arizona that worked a couple months ago, the Regulators, EJ Sparks and Thugnificent. And a team who's been pretty successful, just being put together recently, the new MK Army of Kevin Koa and AJ Mana. So it's going to be a big test for those guys. It's a big test for a team like Sky High and the Suavecitos. The MK Army, there's some big boys. So,
Yeah.
there's some tough guys. So it's going to be an interesting, Sky High and the Regulators had a match, but they're also very, very good. So we're definitely looking
Yeah.
forward to that. We just announced that the No Limits title will now be on the line in a triple threat match. It'll be Matt Vandergriff versus former No Limits champion Funny Bone and former everything champion of every company he worked for, Davey Richards. So we're
Yeah,
definitely looking forward to that special attraction match, as well as Viva Van defending against Maserati. And Nick Xander returns from his suspension against the guy who returns from his self-imposed exile, almost 18 months, Nick Bugatti.
yeah. It's some really nice matches that you have, mixed in between the Battle Royal, the Rumble,
Yeah.
and and the main event. Uh, Maserati, Viva Van, are the fans going to be in Maserati's corner a little bit since she's been gone away for a while, or do you think that she'll still have that nails on the chalkboard reaction, that the fans have to her? Um, she's fascinating because she's grown so much and she's a local, but she's such a good heel. Um, what happens if she gets the love instead of the heat?
Well, everything is possible. Viva Van got no love until all of a sudden they loved her. So there was no
Right.
rhyme or reason. The last time those guys or girls were in the ring together was at the Battle of the Sexes, and they were on the same team, Viva Van
That's right.
and Maserati.
Yeah,
And I'm pretty certain that was the last time we've seen Maserati.
it was. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're talking her and Bugatti most about a year and a half have been away. No
Yeah.
longer the power couple of FSW, but it's interesting that they're both debuting once again or
Yeah.
re-debuting at the same time.
Same time.
Maybe
Yeah.
they rekindle things. Who knows? FSW
Uh,
has been known to be a matchmaker.
with Nick Xander getting an opportunity to wrestle Bugatti, um, obviously he was suspended by FSW, but Nick has, kept up appearances at other places throughout the West Coast.
Yeah, that prick Mike Rain wouldn't have the suspension stand up at Best of the West. Unbelievable.
Um, does does that help Xander when you look at what he's been able to accomplish in, a 2-year time span or so, um, getting those opportunities at like Best of the West in Arizona as well? Um, how do you see his growth, and where does he fit in? Because he's becoming a bigger deal now than he was just a year ago. How does he fit into FSW in the overall picture?
Well, he's definitely one of our stronger baby faces to where he is genuinely loved by a lot of people. And, he's progressed extremely well and he's had success and championships in other companies. I think right now in FSW's world, I think he is a top contender, but I think he still has time to grow
Sure.
because look at who our champions are. It took Gregory Sharp years.
Yeah.
Gregory Sharp took almost 10 years to become a champion in FSW. Being a champion in FSW is a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
We don't have 9 or 10 no limits champions a year. We
Right.
don't have 8 tag team champions a year. Guys, when they win the belts, a lot of times they hold on to them for a good amount of time. Sure, there's going to be people who have a few month reign. And you also got to remember, we run more shows than other companies.
Right.
So it makes the value of the belt even more because we do run more shows.
Right.
A guy like Matt Vandergriff in a 3-month period could defend the belt 7, 8 times.
Right.
While in a lot of other companies, they're running once a month. If they're running once a month, more like every 6 to 8 weeks. Hey, I've been the champion over here for 6 months. And it's like, yeah, and you wrestled 3 times.
Yeah.
So, it's weird that we run more shows, but the champions still hold on to the belts longer.
Right.
It's like you really have to be deserving, and you really have to earn that championship. We don't just bounce around the belt because it's fun to bounce around the belt.
Right.
Matt Vandergriff, you got to be at the top of your game to beat him. Jay Vidal was at the top of his game. There wasn't many people that the fans would have looked at and said, oh, yeah, he could beat Jay Vidal. Oh, he could beat Jay Vidal. Most people were probably the only ones saying that was, yeah, Matt Vandergriff, he could beat Jay Vidal.
Right.
That's a match we'd want to see. And Matt Vandergriff goes in and, yeah, Eli Everfly, I think he could beat Matt Vandergriff. I think he beat him before. But
Yeah.
the thing is, Matt is firing at all cylinders. I genuinely look to put a belt on someone and make them a champion when I think they are primed for a big run and they're not inconsistent in their performances.
Right.
Matt Vandergriff had a very long line of outstanding matches, but you also got to remember he was a tag champion who had to give up the belt.
Right.
So different position to where he was ready and he was getting, and again, that injury to Damian Drake could be the best thing that ever happened to Matt Vandergriff.
Yeah.
Because where would he be today? Same thing with Jay Vidal if Parada didn't just up and quit.
Right.
Would he still be in a tag? We saw a lot of singles potential in Jay Vidal, but would Jay Vidal have moved? Because
Right.
Jay Vidal had a year of success. Well, what if that year was only 3 months because he was in a tag team and then we finally decided to break him off? And then he didn't start his No Limits title run till 3 months before he lost to Vandergriff instead of a year before. It's
Right.
crazy to think of this matrix world of where people would have been if this changed, that changed, or the other thing changed.
Right.
I need to go to
Yeah.
03 next month to find out what would have happened.
Any final words for the listeners as we wrap up this week?
Once again, we return to the Silver Nugget, the Hefe Event Center, the Hefe Bet Event Center. Sorry. I'm hoping that the Hefe Event Bet Center allows us to put up odds of Against All Odds. Because I could go under a pseudonym and actually make a lot of money on a show by betting it. So, but showtime's 5:00. We got a star-studded event with a huge contingent of stars that I'm looking forward to seeing again in FSW. Always fun to have the 30-man Rumble, get to see some fresh faces. My guy D-Mart, always a fan of the Rumble. Last year, hadn't seen him in a couple of years, bought tickets, and he ended up buying like 20 tickets and had him and his crew. Well, this year he doubled it. He's up to 39 tickets.
Wow.
That he's got people coming to sit and cheer on for the Rumble. So looking forward to that. Still some front rows available. We got some great sponsors, Garth and Finley Mazda, once again, sponsoring the main event. Somebody sponsoring the women's match. Offhand, can't think of the name. But we'll mention it numerous times at the show, so no need to worry. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We got D'Lo back on commentary, so I can yell at somebody once they fuck up instead of having to wait till after the show.
That's,
I'm going to lambaste Davey Richards if he misses a spot. You know what I mean?
I think what we need to do is get some kind of camera that you can wear and just have it record, because I think that's one of the most interesting things is
But
watching you just fly around the arena the whole show and deal with shit.
yeah, eh, it's not as easy a job as people would like to make it out to believe. Plus, I'm running the door.
Right.
So
Right.
stop by and say hello and, you know, say you heard me on the podcast.
There
I'll
you
give
go.
you a shout out.
That's right. Yeah. Joe will shout out everyone who mentions the podcast at the door. He'll shout you out next week. So make Joe keep a list of people.
That's right. I like lists.
Yeah. Um, it should be a spectacular show. It's going to be really fun to see what happens with the Rumble and what the match ends up being that Hammerstone has. So definitely check it out. And again, Fight TV 14.99, and the special of get a month free of the FSW network.
Yeah. All you got to do is message us. Send me an email with your receipt, and we'll get you locked and loaded.
There you go. So check that special out as well. And until next week, everyone, hopefully you'll get to see the show. And next week we'll talk about how it went. And, again, just try to enjoy your week and relax this weekend with a little FSW on Sunday. Everyone,